Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Brahmastra Part 1. Shiva is the movie I'm talking about this week. It came out this year, 2022. This is a movie that I saw promoted on Instagram, the trailer, which is the same way I found out that Vikram was available on Hulu. I found out that Brahmastra Part 1 was available on Hulu as well. And so Instagram must know that I've been watching a lot of Indian films this year and promoting Indian films, talking about posting my reviews of Indian films. So it's, I guess, kind of one of the advantages to having no, privacy in the new tech age that we're living in here. But a movie that was not on my radar, unlike Vikram, I was kind of looking forward to. It was a movie that was recommended to me a few times before it got released. And this movie was not at all, like I said, on my radar. But when I saw the trailer, I was like, that looks like a lot of fun. Right? Looks like a superhero movie. Right? Which it kind of is. And like superhero movies are in modern day, modern Western culture, superheroes are pretty much like modern day gods. Obviously, some are actual gods, like Thor, from the old times. But, you know, these people who have magical abilities to save the world, you know, to defend justice and all these things, they have, like, godlike abilities and generally, except for supervillains, generally are trying to better the human race and to make things better. What this movie is doing is taking I believe, this is my theory, I could easily be wrong, but it seems like this movie is taking actual gods from Hinduism, I believe. I think there's many gods involved in that religion, one of the oldest religions, and they are telling stories as if they're superheroes, right? So kind of doing the inverse, like how superheroes are modern day gods. This is taking old gods and bringing them into a modern day, telling them in a modern way, telling stories about them in a modern way, and showing those stories in an exciting action movie with special effects and great fight scenes. Right? So I was excited. Let's check this out. Almost 3 hours long, 2 hours and 47 minutes. But, you know, Zack Snyder has made much longer films that are much worse. For those surprised, I am not a Zack Snyder fan at all. So I would say this is far better than his. I'm sure Zack Snyder fans would disagree, but that's okay. Compared to, like, what Marvel's done, if this movie feels like an Avengers movie, right? Not only is superhero, it's a group of superheroes coming together, teaming up to fight this threat, right? They're collecting, like the Avengers story, collecting the gems for the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity Stones for the Infinity Gauntlet. This is like they're trying to collect these Astras or whatever. I forget what they're called in this movie. But they're trying to collect this thing that gets put together that was split apart to protect whatever. So in that way, it's like an Avengers film, but without all of the films that kind of built up to what those Avengers films were, right? Which was epic. And this movie's trying to tell a lot of that stuff in one film. There is a massive amount of exposition in this movie, which is fine. I want to say a lot of comic book movies have a lot of exposition, but this one's definitely to fill in all of the gaps for all of these gods and everything that's happening. It is a lot of one character telling our main character what's happening, what the story is, what the past story is. So there's a lot of storytelling within this movie, which is fine. So with that said, could have been better, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It has really fun fight scenes, right? Actual, the opening of this movie really reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated show, not the James Cameron Blue Person movie that's coming out. The sequel's coming out, right? I'm not talking about the the live action version that M. Night Shyamalan tried to make, which was horrible, although kind of similar. But the intro to this movie is very similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender, where you're seeing the different elemental benders, the fire bender, water bender, earth bender, wind, air bender, obviously, doing their kind of moves and throwing the thing. This one has a very similar thing. There's a lot of gods that have different powers, different moves, but we're following our main character, who is Shiva, and who is a firebender, basically. And so the intro is very similar, has that vibe of martial arts, has that vibe of airbender powers, being able to control elements, things like that. That's superhero kind of a thing. And then the fight choreography, very much martial arts. Definitely had a feeling of combining more dance style moves to stylize the fighting scenes, which I thought was interesting. Something that, you would see more in martial arts films, Jackie Chan films. Not as much what you see in superhero movies today. Also, the style and the aesthetic of the visual effects of the things like fire, I loved. Majority of. There's a few scenes where it kind of feels like made for TV, kind of cheesy, but not horrible. But clearly, it's it clearly didn't blend in a way that made me feel like I wasn't just watching people in a green room, green screen effects. I love the fire. One thing that I've noticed in a lot of movies that have fire at all is that the fire is always digital. It's very rarely practical effects when fire is needed. And the way they illustrated the fire in this movie, I loved. I thought it had this light, very magical kind of a feeling. I love the visual effects of this. That was one of the things I absolutely loved. I really enjoyed the majority, 90% of the action set pieces were great. Some of the editing was a little bit too much or a little bit off, right? Some of the editing was a little clunky, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it. Now, this movie is available on Hulu, like I said, in the original Hindi language with subtitles, or you can watch a U.S. English dub. I watched the dub. I hate watching the dub. I switched over to the Hindi, and instantly the acting was better, felt better. I enjoy original performances regardless of if I understand the language. I just really didn't feel like reading. And this movie's almost 3 hours. When I watch an Indian film, or any film really, that has subtitles, I'm a slow reader. So I'm usually playing with the pause button quite a bit in order to make sure I don't miss any of the dialogue. I really didn't feel like doing that for this movie, so I watched the dub version, which after a while, I kind of just got used to it. I just assumed the performances would be better because I at least got to hear the performances for the small bit that I switched over to the original, the Hindi version. But I was I'd rather just watch this movie, enjoy this movie. It's a superhero movie. Let me unplug, man. Let me just detach and enjoy it and not have to worry about reading everything. And it helped. Would have been better watching the Hindi, so whatever. Both are available, which is nice. I'm good with that being available. At least there's so many Indian films on Hulu that don't even have subtitles, which is insane. like at least do the bare minimum. Like run it through like some Google Translate at least. Give me something. But yeah, there's been a bunch of movies that I thought were available to me, but not. I'd have to learn another language. But that's Hulu. Unlike Netflix, which is amazing with having subtitles in so many different languages and even having dub versions in so many different languages. Like I think Netflix is on point when it comes to making their content as globally accessible as possible. So anyway, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the superhero aspect of it. Makes complete sense. I enjoyed kind of why, like, the powers they have. They wear like jewelry that gives them these powers, like anklets or bracelets. The kind of animal that they represent, like some are a monkey or a rhino or whatever. They have like this. They kind of have like this magical avatar that appears above them as they're like channeling their powers. Loved that.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote.
I figured out a way on my website to offer prints for every single painting. So if you go to a painting, you can buy the original painting or you can buy a print for everything. Artwork that you don't want to spend $100 plus on, 9 by 12 inch ink painting on paper, $100 for the original one-of-a-kind piece of artwork. Paintings range in price depending on their size. The 8 by 10 print, $20. Available in the store at inspireddisorder.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
The only thing that kind of took me out, that kind of just felt like they're putting this in because it seems like it's a common thing that most Indian films have, and even a lot of U.S. films have, to try and give like kind of a shortcut to make the audience care about characters more, right? It's trying to provide stakes, trying to make things a little bit more risky for the people involved, and that's the love story. Despite the fact that the actress who is the love interest, Isha, in this is Alia Bhatt, who played Gangubai Kathiawadi in the movie of the same name, which is a movie I absolutely loved. That was one of my favorite performances I've seen from a female actress this year of any race, creed, country, language, whatever. I thought her performance was amazing. I thought that movie was great. I thought the cinematography of Gangubai Kathiawadi was amazing as well. Gorgeous film. Her character in this is pretty generic female love interest character. No real depth to her at all. She's wealthy. She meets a DJ who is our Shiva, who's played by Ranbir Kapoor. He's a EDM DJ, which is like, okay, right? I'm glad he didn't vape, at least. Like he's marking off a lot of the boxes on the douchebag bingo card, but I still enjoyed the character. But DJs in general, I don't know. At least in America, DJs generally synonymous with douchebag, cultural thing. Trying not to bring my baggage, my predetermined, my ignorance and prejudice over to what could be culturally completely different. But her character, Isha, is definitely could have been way better. It just felt tacked on. I didn't like they fall in love so easy. She is necessary to be what is his switch, as they call it, the thing that triggers him, the thing that allows him to channel his superpowers, is what he thinks is her, but ends up being love, which is something that she provides him. He loves her, so that connects him to the energy he needs to control fire. So she's necessary for his growth as this superhero / god, but as a character, very empty, very tacked on, and an actress that I love. So it's kind of sad that her character wasn't given more to do, which I don't necessarily know what it would have, but kind of a bummer to see, right, a great actress not really given anything to do, to just kind of be that love interest side piece. But other than that, and other than him being a DJ, I enjoyed it, right? The first part is like he doesn't even know he has powers. He meets this girl, falls in love, kind of has a thing for her, and has that thing where he's trying to convince her to, like, spend more time with her, trying to do his game or whatever. Takes her home to his place and, she sees the sob story of where he came from. It's like, oh, he's an orphan. He lives with these orphans. He like kind of runs an orphanage or whatever. He's like this really good guy. And she's just like this rich woman. And it's like, it's fine. It's like, okay, they're doing the thing. They're doing this love interest thing, which is also very common in many that I've noticed. Every single Indian film, there's always like the romantic aspect. There's always a love interest, whether it's as blown up as being almost a full-blown romantic comedy within the movie itself, or there's always like even like a movie like Three Idiots. Like it could easily have just been a movie about those three guys, but even in that, they gave Rocky the love story, right, which pays off at the end. I think that was blended way better than this one. I don't necessarily know if that character was definitely given a little bit more than this character is, but it's definitely something I've noticed in many Indian films. There's always like a element of love story within romance within the movie. Maybe Dangal didn't have. I don't think that one really did. The love of wrestling, maybe. But yeah, I enjoyed that enough. It didn't bother me. It didn't take me out of the movie at all. Right? There weren't any aspects of the movie that were like, oh, that's, right? The visual effects are mostly great. There's only a few moments that are like, not good. Some editing choices that were like, okay, that kind of, it's not as like precise and clean as I'm used to seeing in like Marvel movies. And even I'm sure there's Marvel movies that have issues as well. I mean, not all Marvel movies are amazing, but it's got him finding that he has powers. He has this history where he thinks he knew he had powers, like that fire didn't burn him, but he had the idea that his powers were the thing that caused his mom's death, and he had always blamed himself for that, so he's never used these powers because of that, and never knew his parents, but also always felt blamed himself for his mom dying specifically. Like that's one of his few memories from being as a baby, this time where his mom burned. So it's some of it's him accepting who he is. Some of it is him learning about his past. That's one big part of the exposition, is this giant story that happened between Dave. When I kept hearing them say Dave is this god, and the sequel, part 2, is Dave, and it's D-E-V, pronounced by everybody in this movie Dave. Doesn't sound like this old ancient mythical god guy. And then the mom had like a legit name, which I'm probably not going to be able to find here of that character's name, but sounded more like a god name than Dave. But he finds out about his parents, and he finds out how, like, kind of similar to Star Wars in some ways. It's like, oh, his parents are kind of a big deal. But that's all told in exposition, right? There's no moment in this movie that lands like the Star Wars moment where Luke finds out that Vader is his father. That's a major epic kind of reveal that's told in the movie as part of the movie, versus Luke having a conversation with Obi-Wan where he just gets told all about his parents. Like Obi-Wan telling him, like, oh, by the way, your dad is, the guy, he's Darth Vader, and, so that, and this whole thing happened, and there's this whole war. Like, if they were to describe, if, like, the only Star Wars movie was the third one, and they just describe, it's like, oh yeah, there was this time where, remember Luke, when you went to the Death Star and then you shot in that one spot. That was like, if all of those movies were just told in exposition, that's kind of what a lot of this movie is.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote
The benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced. Hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to asking me anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school, and you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus.
And now let's get back to the show.
Where it's like, this movie probably would have been far more epic, especially how, I mean, it definitely feels huge budget, definitely feels like this movie is like epic, right? It is at the same scale, budget, scale-wise, like visual effects, story, all of that stuff. It is at like an Avengers Marvel level movie, right? Legit, big budget, massive, mega epic superhero story, right? Would have landed and would have been more epic if there were movies leading up to it. You know? So it hurts. It all of the exposition is nice because it tells you a lot of what's going on, but in between that, there's fight scenes. In between that, of course, there's montages of training. He finds this place where other people who have superpowers go and they train, the other Avenger kind of people. We don't get to know any of them. Their abilities are amazing. There's a kid that has these abilities. There's an emotional moment involving that kid. There's some epic. The last battle of this movie is amazing. Right? Better than most last battles, right? Most final battles in superhero movies are set at night and you can't see anything. There's just a blue beam in sky and people fighting in the dark, right? That is so many final battles and so many. The visual and the lighting and everything of the final hour of this movie is epic, right? It would have been even more epic if we had gotten to find, if this was part 3 instead of part 1, or if this was a culmination of 3 other movies, right? And then this is the Avengers movie. Like, if there was a separate movie about the kid, there was a separate movie about the old guy, if there was a separate movie about the woman who does like the water bending or whatever she does, right? If there were other movies that introduced us to those other characters that were part of this Avengers squad, that final battle would have been very much way closer to the final battle of the Avengers movies, that massive, you know, with the snap and all that. It would have been a lot closer. Like, it's definitely visual, amazing, gorgeous, the visual effects in this movie, and especially the end of this movie, that final battle. Gorgeous. Better than most superhero movies, hands down. But because to get there, we were just given all of the information via exposition, it didn't have that same punch. I didn't know about these characters. I didn't care about these characters as much. I did a little bit because it's still interesting stuff. Interesting storytelling within the fight scenes, interesting storytelling during like massive special effects where things are happening to people and you're just understanding what's happening by what you're seeing, right? Not exposition, not people like dumbing it down to you. Very cool. Loved all that. But yeah, so other than that, I kind of liked it. I liked it a lot, actually. Better than most superhero movies. Say that. Could have been better in those things that I mentioned. You know, but what are you going to do? I'm excited for part 2. I looked it up, right? Dave, D-E-V, part 2. Not coming out until December of 2025. So I have 3 years until the third film, which that's in theaters, so probably spring of 2026. We'll see how much I remember this movie 4 years from now, but or 5 years from now, or however long that's going to be. And there's no post-credit scene, so different in that way from all of the superhero movies, which I'm glad. I'm kind of over the superhero movies have ruined post-credit scenes. It's just ridiculous. Just stop. Just give me the thing, hit the credits, let me go. But yeah, overall I liked it. The love story felt tacked on. Seemed like a complete misuse of Alia Bhatt's talents and abilities as an actress. You know, just the attractive love interest, all she amounted to in this movie. Would highly recommend people go check out Gangubai Kathiawadi. Amazing movie. Her performance is amazing. One of my favorite movies I've seen this year. Having to tell so much of this in backstory, in exposition, bummer. Would have landed so much harder if it was, done in a way, but who has Disney's money to roll out like 20 films to build up to the climax of what that was? So what are you going to do? I enjoyed it enough. I thought it was a lot of fun. This movie is like very divisive. There's a lot of hate for this movie. Mostly criticizing the story. I don't know. They're like, the complaints they have for this movie, you could easily put on every superhero movie ever made. But then there's also a lot of love. So I don't know. I don't know how it stands. I'm trying to understand the cultural relevance of these movies for the Indian community. And after finding out that Dobara and Lal Singh Chadha were both boycotted, and I wasn't able to figure out why. I don't know. I don't know if this one was boycotted, but definitely was. People didn't like it. It's for what it's doing, big budget action superhero movie. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, it could have been better, but you could say that about every superhero movie. Most superhero movies could be better in a lot of ways. But yeah, I liked it a lot. This visual effects, interesting, unique, and new, right? Visual effects you don't really see, a style you don't really see, and I appreciated that. I liked that kind of new feel, new look to visual effects, and just absolutely gorgeous, as so many Indian films are. Like, the cinematography is like, visually they know how to make something look great. But that's it. I would recommend it. Check it, especially if you're into action or superhero movies. Check it out. Like, it's a fun superhero movie. Brahmastra Part 1, Shiva. It's on Hulu. Watch it dubbed if you want, or get it better performances, get more out of the performances, and watch the subtitles.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.